Hi, welcome to Dit Dot. My name's Amanda. So a couple of nights ago, I made my no peak stew. I'll link it down in the description box. I normally serve it with noodles, but a friend commented on my Instagram account that she would love to have it with biscuits. And I was like, wow, because I only ever served it with noodles or rice. And I'm like, that actually sounds really good. So once she put that little bug in my ear, I knew that for the leftovers, which are in my refrigerator tonight, I was gonna make some biscuits. So, all right, the first thing we're gonna do is preheat our oven to 450 degrees. I honestly can't tell you when the last time I've bought like canned biscuits because homemade biscuits are just so easy to make. So I'm gonna start off with 2 cups of just an all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and a teaspoon of salt. These can be made in a food processor. I'm just going to show you today how easy it is to make it if you don't have a food processor or you don't want to get yours out for whatever reason. Also, they're really easy to modify. If you want to add cheese to them, you can add cheese and make cheesy biscuits. Or if you want to add like a bunch of herbs and make herb biscuits. So the next step is to get very, very cold butter. Half a cup of butter. These cook up so quickly and they don't have to have time to rise or anything like that. These are just fast, quick cooking biscuits that you can add to any dinner or breakfast. And one of the other ways to adapt the recipe, you'll see we're gonna be adding 3/4 cup of milk, but if you add a full cup of milk, then the batter is a little bit more loose and they make perfect drop biscuits for like if you are making chicken and dumplings, and you can drop them down into a broth, or you can drop them into mounds on a cookie sheet if you're in a hurry and you don't want to have time to roll out biscuits. So they'll be a little bit more loose and, you know, like an organic shape biscuit, but the drop biscuits just are a faster, if you're like even in a more time crunch. Okay, so you saw I took this butter and you cut it up into a bunch of small blocks. The smaller that you cut them, the easier the next step is if you're gonna do this by hand. So this is also a way to do homemade pie crust. And you can either take 2 knives if you don't have a butter cutter. I think that's the official term for this thing. I need to actually look that up. Anyway, and you go like this, and this would be a knife, and you put them down in, and you cut your butter into your flour. But that's the old school method. I do have one of these. That's what I'm gonna use. Wire whisk. The ones that have the blades are a little bit better, but basically you just mash this up against your flour. Again, you want really cold butter. That's a super important step for flaky biscuits because the butter, when it bakes when you put it in the hot oven, the butter will melt and create little pockets, and that's where you get like little flakes. So then you take your knife and kind of every once in a while just kind of push the butter through. The ones with the, like I said, the blades kind of break up the butter a little bit faster, but this one's still good. So I'm gonna keep doing this until you don't have any big chunks of butter and you are just left with a sand-like texture. So I will show you what that looks like in a minute. So as you can see, we're almost done. There might be a couple of slightly bigger pieces, but we've got pretty much all of it to a nice, fine, sandy texture, and that's what we're looking for. It's okay if there are some lumps, and don't worry about feeling like you're overworking your dough at this point because we haven't really introduced a liquid. Then you can't really overwork the dough. That's why you want to get the butter incorporated into your flour as best you can in this step. I really should have put an apron on, especially wearing a black shirt when you're working with flour, right? But that's okay, living on the danger side. Okay, so I've got my flour and butter incorporated, and I'm gonna add 3/4 cup of cold milk, and then we will stir this in. Now at this point, we just want to bring our dough together and we don't want to overmix it because that will make for a tough biscuit. We want light, fluffy, airy biscuits. But it does have to come together. So if you were using a food processor, you would process the butter and the flour together a couple of times until you got that same sandy texture. And then again, you would add your milk and then process it again until your dough comes together. So when it's still kind of shaggy like this, I'm going to go ahead and roll it out or pour it out onto my work table here that I'm going to add a little bit more flour to. We're going to carefully pat this out. You want it to, oh man, I'm making a big mess here. You want it to come together, but again, we don't want to overwork it. So we're just going to knead it just a handful of times. So it's April and I live in the Pacific Northwest, and apparently we have had historic weather. So we got the first snowfall in recorded data yesterday. We had like several inches of snow. It was crazy. And then today we had a thunderstorm, which thunderstorms are pretty rare up here in the Pacific Northwest. And then we had hail, and then it started snowing again. Now most of the snow is melted off. There is a little bit of hail still in the yard, but wow, crazy. Okay, so I've got it kind of together here in a little round thing here. That's really, really descriptive. And I'm taking my fingers and I'm patting it and I'm kind of shoring up the edges, because when I go to roll it out, this will help if I make the edges nice and tight for it to not split. So yeah, who knew that putting stew on the menu was actually going to be a good thing, because it's still stew weather here apparently. So my no-peak stew is so delicious. Okay, we want to roll it to about 1/2 inch thick. That's looking 1/2 inch. Okay, so my Mema always made biscuits in a pie plate, but I'm just gonna use this cookie sheet. And one thing that she would always do is take a couple pats of butter and put them in her pie plate and put it in the oven just briefly to melt the butter, and you'll see why. So this is what my dough looks like right now. It's about 1/2 inch thick, and we're gonna now cut out some biscuit rounds with this biscuit cutter. Okay, so got the butter hot enough that I am just swirling it around. This thing isn't very hot because it was only in there for just a couple of seconds. Now you want to plan out your biscuits as best you can so you can get as many as you want. Push down, kind of jiggle it a little bit, and then to release it, and then gently pull it out. And you're just going to cut out as many as you can. Then you can re-roll your dough. The first roll is always the best, because again, the more you work your dough, the tougher your biscuits are going to be. So your first ones that you cut out are your premium guest biscuits. The rest are still good, but they're not going to be as good. So you see, I am cutting these together as best I can, and I'm not even going to have that much dough left. I did pretty good. Oh wow, this one's really flaky. It's coming apart in my hand. Hopefully that'll cook together. We'll see. Okay, I think I had a little too much flour down on my cutting board. All right, so this is gonna roll back out to maybe one more biscuit actually. This will be the cook's biscuit. Okay, so again, if you want it to have that where it can rise up, the cutting actually does help with that, because it gives the right texture for the sides of your biscuit. So this is gonna be the big old biscuit though, because it's a little thicker than the other ones. It's gonna fall apart. So gentle, but I'm gonna carefully put it on my cookie sheet. That one I don't think is gonna stay together. It's probably gonna fall apart, but that's okay. So I'm gonna pop this into the oven for 10 to 12 minutes. And, oh wait. So normally the reason why I have that butter down is yes, then we flip them over really gently. That way they get buttered on both sides. Okay, come on, Granddaddy Biscuit. This poor little guy right there kind of is falling apart, but you know what? That's okay, we're home cooks here. You want to bake these for 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, dear friends, apparently my mic went out in this last little bit, but I wanted to show you the finished biscuits. Oh my gosh, they are so fluffy and they just flaked right apart with a little bit of butter and strawberry jam. I mean, look at that face. I was one happy mama. Here are the biscuits straight out of the oven. I put them on a cooling rack. They are so golden and just soft on the inside and crunchy on the outside. You can see the layers, they pulled apart just perfectly. These are amazing biscuits. You gotta try them. That is a Granddaddy biscuit. A little lumpy, but still delicious. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and leave me a comment below, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Staying to the end means the world to me.